Welcome to the first episode of the Maveric Banking Edge podcast series, hosted by P. Venkatesh, Director, Thought Leadership, Maveric Systems. Joining him today is PJ Giamarino, CEO, JWG.
Good morning, PJ, and we are pleased to have you on this series of podcast.
Great to be here, Venkatesh. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Now, PJ, this is the first in the series of podcasts that we are trying to do on the regulatory reporting side. And we really thought that while there have been a lot of discussions and debates about the digital regulatory reporting, there has not been much of a talk around a very similar digitization effort on the regulatory side itself. While it is being used by the risk and compliance teams of banks, is there a way to bring the digital regulation platforms and the digital regulatory reporting platforms together so that end-to-end benefits could be seen by the banks? That is precisely the context, PJ. And I really thought that who would be a better person than you to actually kickstart this, because since 2006, you have been pioneering the digitization of the regulation and trying to actually structure them and include the artificial intelligence tools in order to make that platform of great value to the risk and compliance teams for the banks across the world.
Yeah, thank you. It's been quite a journey. I guess the thing that's attracted us most to this reporting space is quite simply that, this data really matters. We saw through the crisis. In fact, we were there before the crisis, running lots of workshops on reporting, and we really got to understand the pain of the industry as it tries to digest and interpret what exactly the regulators are asking for. And oftentimes it's perfectly clear to the regulator that they don't know the detail of the report, but they expect the industry to get together and fill it in. So as we run joint working groups, we work with lots of professionals that have the right kind of perspectives to be able to help fill that gap. But a lot of this knowledge just lives in people's heads within the banks and hasn't been able to get into tooling until now. So that's the exciting part for us, is that you can take away a lot of the manual pain that of the current processes, and you can use RegTech to where it really matters, which is helping the people at the coalface make better decisions about what they are doing to be compliant.
See, PJ, you did mention one of the challenges is to actually have the right interpretation so that people are aware about what they need to comply with. These digital regulatory platforms, including the ones by you, they have collated the information across jurisdiction and across a whole lot of regulations. Do they also add a set of interpretation for the benefit of the bankers, which they could enhance and actually use it in their context?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the ultimate goal is to provide the bank the assistance to be able to make a safe interpretation, as quickly, easily, and cheaply as possible. Too often the scraping of the data is tough, and people miss things, and they get things late, and they don't get the right person to look at something, and so there's just a natural opportunity in the regulatory content space to be able to get the update to the point of interpretation as fast as possible and make it seamless for the update of what the requirements are. And nobody can use AI magically to determine what a bank's obligations are. That's it's a nice marketing story. And I really thank Watson for winning Jeopardy, but it's just led to a lot of confusion in the industry about what AI can do for you. AI can't give you the answer. It can't take away the entire pain because the bank is still responsible. You can't go tell the regulator that my AI gave me the wrong number. What you need to do is use the natural language processing and the intelligence and humans in the loop to make that process, straight through for the interpretation that you do give to the regulator.
Very nice, PJ. If I understood you correctly, you are saying that these platforms not only comprehensively collect, collate, and actually annotate and provide the required interpretation, they also enable through these AI platforms for the people on the platform to collaborate to further enhance them and therefore make it very contextual to their own operations.
That's exactly right. So if you have somebody in your firm that is looking at just purely the operational aspects of producing transaction reports or prudential statistical reports, you can get them to look at just the fields that matter to them. Right, so an execution timestamp, for example, you can make sure that however the language talks about the production of a data field, you can assign that to an analyst to look at that particular example. But likewise, if you have a liquidity coverage ratio or runoff assumption or something very technical and complicated that you want your expert to look at, you can pull that person in to come help look at that interpretation with you. And this is where through a collaborative platform that has a single version of the truth, you can then allow an organization to harness the best of all the people and the skill sets in it, and to be able to then have one place where senior management can agree.
Very good, very good. And if I understood you correctly, PJ, do you mean to say that the platform has the level of granularity which is driven by the context, and in addition, the banks can also add their own context and therefore assign it to the right groups of people within the bank who handle those contexts?
That's exactly right. So you can set it up so that the people that are responsible for those particular challenges are accountable for tracking new things as they come in, and then getting approval to the interpretation that they've added to the system. And I think that's a really fundamental aspect of RegTech for this digital regulatory reporting is making sure the humans are in the loop and that they're looking at for all their use cases the right kinds of interpretations, not only from within their firm, but the best practices and the industry standards and the decisions that are made by regulators. So this isn't one of the challenges we all have with regulatory reporting is it changes all the time. It's not enough to do just one project and be done for 10 years. You're going to have model upgrades, you're going to have product decisions, you're going to have risk classification changes. You have data testing and quality control that will be feedback loop into your process. You'll have discussions with your regulators. It's a movable feast, and what the benefit of going into a platform like this is you don't have to rework it every time. You can have a constant view of what you think your requirements are that's smart and up to date.
See now, PJ, does that mean that you not only collate, granularize, contextualize, and provide that platform, but you also enable the interpretation being the workflow process relating to the interpretation being reviewed by the different groups within the bank and signed off so that it becomes the actionable regulatory part for the banks to follow?
That's right. So what my team does is make sure we understand the regulatory dialogue, and really understand it, so we can model all the things that they're talking about. ESG is a great example of new area where you're really having to dive into the detail of these standards and figure out what those topics are. And that's where we can then get the documentation, model it, enrich it, make sure that when anything is put out across the globe, it's tagged back to a common standard. But then by sending that to a client, we can make sure that they have identified the terms they care about in that documentation, and it's routed through their workflow. And that's the part of then helping them make sure they're all on the same page and that they're able to produce the lineage and the evidence back to why they made those decisions.
Excellent. And does that mean that the standard version of the platform carries the best practices, and how do you draw those best practices from across the globe to be incorporated into the platform?
Yeah, there's no magic to it, Venkatesh. It's all about leveraging the power of the industry and getting the experts on the particular topics to weigh in. So it's about making sure that when you get your instance, it has all of the information that could be available for that particular topic that's up to date. And then that'll enable the experts within the bank to say, okay, right, this is the way I'm going to come up with that calculation and put this runoff assumption in. So really what you're doing is getting the best of the industry for the application of the firm so the individual can be comfortable making those calls.
See, PJ, you mentioned about the best practices. Does that also mean that you also cover the interpretation of the supervisors as part of the platform?
Yes, I mean, anything that is an interpretive document, it could be an email. It could be a trade association spreadsheet. It could be a speech given by somebody. All that has good interpretation. And so what we do is treat all documentation as a potential source of a rule interpretation, and we allow any paragraph or footnote from any document to be referenced as part of the decision about how a field is going to be populated. And then that's the key for us, is having the link back to a persistent identifier for any artifact in the system. Allows you to be safe in your knowledge of this is why I'm doing it this way.
Okay, to actually elaborate a bit there, PJ, you consolidate not only from the regulatory sources that information, but also the views, opinions, comments made by the various people, which in your team's view would be helpful for someone to interpret the regulation, is also added into the platform. And therefore what the banks would get is not only pure legislative text, but also the opinions, views, interpretations of the relevant people, which could be helping them in coming to a decision on the interpretation of the regulation.
Yeah, that's right. In effect, one way that's helpful to describe this is crowdsourcing, right?
Okay.
So we're going to get the best, everything the regulator has to say, everything the industry has to say, everything individuals within a firm have to say, and we're putting that all in one place. And when we do put it in one place, we then say, right, so what does that all mean? And how do we then justify our decisions and have an interpretation process that we can, trust it's right for us, because all of these decisions come down to any one firm. They don't really mean anything in industry best practice. Every firm is held accountable by their regulator for doing the right thing for them. If a supervisor is sitting down with me in my firm, he doesn't want to hear about how I looked at some industry practice and just took that as the right answer. He wants to know, he or she, how did I actually get to my answer and make sure I manage my risks? Because I have a different set of customers, I have a different business model, I operate in a different set of jurisdictions. There's a whole bunch of factors that will be specific to my institution, and that's what the regulator wants to know, that anybody producing a report has under control.
Absolutely, absolutely. And is this a standalone platform, PJ, or have you integrated or tried to integrate with the regulatory reporting platforms as well?
We have integrated it. It's one of the real powers of this model is that, you can do so much with text and XML based documents and the natural language processing. We found it really powerful to have an API. So we're able to take away the upfront pain of crowdsourcing all the documentation, allowing humans to make the decisions, and then shooting those decisions out to other applications. Because we all know it doesn't stop with your policy. Once you've got your policy defined, you need to set up your controls. And once your controls are set up, you need to then test them. And you need to have a whole flow, even down to your auditors, to be able to say, this is how that one change that came from this regulator in this jurisdiction triggered a whole series of activities we can now prove that we comply with.
See, just for my clarity and also for the rest, PJ, the platform provides for lineage in respect of the regulatory evolution, and then with the interpretation, it gets distributed to the various functions within the bank. But does it also get integrated with how it is executed in those functions to provide a lineage as to how it has been actually implemented?
Yes, it can and should do eventually. So, if I have an interpretation that says based on these three documents, A plus B equals C, with a system that's doing that calculation, we'll need to have a control against it. It will need to have a data quality check for it. So what we do is then say the A plus B equals C is the interpretation, and that's then linked to the control. And then so anyone then wants to look at either the code in terms of how the code is produced, or the control for the code, can then link back to the interpretation that sits within our RegDelta platform.
But you said it will eventually happen, Vijay. Does that mean that till now no one has actually integrated? And second, I definitely foresee some challenges in integration, because unless the change process incorporates this lineage, it is not going to be easy to put them into implementation.
It's fair that yes, it's not necessarily easy to get that up and running. I think it's fair to say the concept has been proven and battle tested, and a lot of our work with the industry, we've proven these concepts ourselves, either directly with the regulators or directly with clients or directly with working groups. But that whole discussion about how do you work it into your business as usual as opposed to a change project is still ongoing. I mean, we've been providing data to people for years, years and years. What we're starting to get smarter about is how to get that interpretation then passed on to other systems so that they can have a link back to what people decided to do with the data that they get about the regulators.
But PJ, you have also been on the other side as at the leadership position in large street banks, and you would know that many of the transaction systems do not have lineage as one of the deliverables.
Correct. Yes. I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. One of the reasons I started working on this giant challenge of what is the regulatory requirement is I knew that all the source systems and everything that fed through, to one report required a lot of interpretation, right? So if I have 100 systems I have to go query in order to produce one report, I better have lineage back between how I made the decisions about what I was taking, and I need to keep those systems under change control. So really, if you think about it, we have multiple environments we have to manage the state of, and regulation is just part of that.
Yeah, and especially if you are not only dealing with reports, but you are also dealing with the rest of the compliance, whether it is on account of AML or sanctions, whatever it be.
Absolutely, and we've all seen what's happened there. I mean, there are a lot of very stressed out teams dealing with 2 years of sanctions in 6 weeks, and a lot of things that are stressing out the operations and control functions right now. And the more we can help them by automating that flow, the better off we all are as an industry.
Very true. Very, very, very true. See, PJ, it is more a one-time effort to build that pipe and to have that lineage, and you could see years of benefit coming through that program.
Yeah, and I guess that's the trick with this from any manager's point of view is working out where to start. Because there is such a long-term effect of it. You've got to work out how do you dig in on that one particular problem and prove the concept to my team so that everyone can get used to working it in this way, because it is different. You're not running around with spreadsheets anymore, and it's not we need Jane or Bob to come in and deal with this one thing because only they know about it. It's opening up the information flow and the intelligence within the organization. So I always encourage my clients is figure out where that pain point is and improve the value. Get out in front of that project or remediation effort or whatever it is. But you're going to be doing that work anyway. Some point this year. Just do it in a better, faster, cheaper, and safer manner.
Perfect, PJ. In fact, that has been one of because whenever we ask the clients to, they have not been able to pinpoint where they would actually start with. And therefore, we thought we will take the leap and actually do it for regulatory reporting to begin with. And the prototype has been successful, as you know. And if we could take that and actually implement it in a client context, then people will know that here is a fair place to start. And once that picks up, I think we could take pockets in sanctions before we actually move into the AML part.
Yeah, and look, it's all part of the journey, and I think there's a lot of operations and compliance teams out there just dying for a bit of help. So I think that those that are up for and brave enough to kind of say, look, let's just try it, are going to get huge benefits. And as ever in this industry, you can always sit back and do nothing. You can kind of keep doing it the way you have been doing it, and things will break and problems will emerge, and blood pressure will get raised and bad things will happen. But more and more, I think it's up to the the ops and tech people to really step up and say, look, we can help with all this compliance stuff, and there are tools out there to do it.
Absolutely, PJ. See, if we were to actually give one recommendation to the ops people, what would it be?
I think it's it's figure out who the stakeholders are across legal and compliance and the business that would have to be bought into this kind of a concept, and prove to them the scope that's achievable. You can actually do it. It doesn't really matter, like you say, is it ESG or is it prudential reporting, or is it the implementation of a consolidated tape, or is it something as AML KYC related? But hive the process off and figure out how you define a new version of what good looks like. And through that, then create the business case where you can scale up the concept. But that's the way that you can get this tooling in.
And towards that end, are you also working to create a similar ecosystem, PJ?
We're all about ecosystems where that follow the tough problems. I like to think of my remit next couple of years as managing a three-ring circus. And the first, we have the markets and all the new activity from digital assets, and that they're sparking a whole series of conversations about how do we know the safety and security of the counterparties we're dealing with, as well as the actual trading activity. The second area is how are we managing risk internally and reporting it to our regulators, and then the third is really related to the operations and technology itself. And there's a whole resilience agenda and proving that our third-party risk management and cloud platforms and data governance and all that good stuff is really under control. So, regulators have not let up. Everyone might wish they would, but there's a ton of new stuff coming, and we're trying to stay out ahead of it and making sure we get the right interested people around the table where we can.
I see. Now, does it mean that you have included DORA also as part of your platform?
Absolutely, yeah. DORA is one of the cornerstones of that third circus I mentioned, but it certainly doesn't align with everything that's going on around the globe, and it also sits in. There are interesting intersections with the rest of the European agenda in DORA. So we're taking a hard look at that. We actually have a research paper on the way out. If I could give a quick second to promote it, look for our new infrastructure paper in early July.
Oh, I look forward to that, PJ. Certainly I would.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the time, Venkatesh. I think it's hopefully been a useful conversation for your efforts. And I guess if I could just ask you in closing, how are you looking at the prospects from your clients this year? Are you seeing a demand for these kinds of services?
See, we certainly see a lot of interest in what we propose to them on this hard job, PJ. And a hard job, when we say, it's not only in terms of building lineage for regulatory, but also the primary data pipe being developed and maintained in a way that the data quality improves and the data reporting in turn further improves. And if things have been waiting for a long time, it isn't an easy job to set that right very quickly. And like what you mentioned about finding the right instance or opportunity to actually show the value of data lineage, we are also trying to see what would be the appropriate ones to show the value of data quality and data pipelines in order that and the level of automation that we could do in them.
Yeah, and I guess as ever, it's dependent upon each firm's agendas, but you're very well placed to be helping with this kind of a challenge and to work out the right kind of themes from your point of view.
I guess we are. I guess so, Vijay. Now, yeah, thanks so much for being part of this series. I might reach out to you again in a subsequent section of this podcast, PJ.
Thank you very much for having me, Venkatesh, and I look forward to working with you soon.
Sure.
Thank you.